In my last video, I talked about CPU affinity and priority settings and how people are saying that unchecking CPU 0 would improve performance. When I specifically tried unchecking CPU 0, only 1 out of my 3 PCs got better performance, and the other 2 performed worse. So I concluded that it totally depends on your system. Unchecking CPU 0 is definitely not going to help every computer run CSGO at higher performance, which was kind of the whole point of that video. The most important thing to take from all this is that unchecking different CPUs in the affinity settings will give you different results. They could be better or they could be worse. In this video, I will attempt to answer some of your replies from my last video by looking more closely at the affinity settings for my Ryzen 3900X on my main PC. Reason why is because it got worse performance when simply following the magic trick of unchecking CPU 0. So, is it possible to still get a performance boost with different affinity settings on my Ryzen 3900X? With Ryzen Master, I can see all the cores within their CCXs. CCX, to simplify, are basically groups of cores that share the same cache, and it's specific to AMD. With this software, I can also see the performance of each core, which is really useful. So while CSGO is running, I can note down the cores running the slowest within each CCX. Then in the affinity settings, I can uncheck the specific CPUs to see if that would take more advantage of the ones running faster. I'm using Process Lasso for this, and my Ryzen CPU has 12 cores with 24 threads, which is why you're seeing 24 CPUs in here. This means that I would have to pair CPU 0 and CPU 1 with core 1 and so on. After grouping them all up, all I need to do is uncheck the ones coming from the slowest cores in each CCX. This means that, in theory, CSGO would then take advantage of the cores running faster. So, how did the benchmarks go? By unchecking specific CPUs to remove the slowest core per CCX, the average FPS increased by roughly 1%, but my 1% lows got shot in the face. Even with 0.1% lows going up a bit, it is not a worthy payoff. Sure, the average FPS went up, technically speaking making it an FPS boost, but the overall stability when taking the 1% lows into consideration really made it overall worse. And here's the old change just so you can see the difference. I am not going to play with these settings either way. Now what if we uncheck more cores per CCX? So instead of just unchecking the slowest core, we do it for the 2 slowest cores and only allow 1 core per CCX. I was expecting less stable performance with a higher FPS. I was correct. I'm getting an even higher FPS boost, but my slowest frames are even worse. Even if the average FPS went up, it is still not worth it due to the drop in slow frames. Imagine shooting someone and your FPS drops. Using these settings would make that instance even worse. And to be honest, that's when it matters most. This is a perfect example of a tweak that, in my opinion, you do not want to rely on. Last test was disabling simultaneous multi-threading through Process Lasso. This will make sure that all the CPUs in the affinity settings affected by my threads are unchecked. This time, my performance went up all around the board, and my 0.1% lows went up quite significantly. In all my tests so far, I've never been able to reach these positive results on my 0.1% lows. It just proves that you can really go deep with CPU affinity settings. If you have a Ryzen CPU with CCX groupings, you could take the same steps that I took and try it out yourself. Please remember though, do it at your own risk. Because of these positive results, I'm gonna play with simultaneous multi-threading disabled for a couple days just to see if it keeps up. Just remember that these settings work for me and they probably won't for you. It all depends on your PC. Thanks for watching, stay awesome, and go bananas.